I am filthy filth. A disgusting illegitimate child born under a noble above all else. People always looked at me with contempt and gave me the back finger of scorn. A lowly, disgusting piece of filth under the sun. That was me. However, I had one such talent, and it was the very power of healing. Heal. Healing is a blessing bestowed by the heavens to those who are suffering from illness. Healers who could use heals received high treatment and enjoyed wealth and prosperity regardless of their status. As a filthy bastard, I struggled to survive, to be recognized as a decent being. But I was also a pathetic healer. Below grade F. That was my healing power. I tried so hard, but I could not overcome the barrier of my talent. I've been stuck in my apprentice status for 5 years, and now I play miscellaneous roles for other healers. A gruff guy. A dirty guy. A pathetic person. Those were the words that were used to describe me. But then, one day, a miracle happened to me. You've awakened as a player. Job surgeon. The miraculous ability of the medical art of the place called Earth was put into my body as an F-grade flunking healer. You've awakened as a player. Raymond thought the message was just a dream. Wasn't that obvious? A surgeon, not a healer? Sir. Jian? What the hell is that? Raymond chuckled. Not only that, but it was something he'd never heard before. It was the first time he had seen it. It was a gray, inorganic space. A patient? A patient was lying on a high bed in the middle of the room, bleeding profusely. Vitals? They're bleeding too badly. Get a blood transfusion there faster. Squeeze it with your hands. In that dream, Raymond was a healer, in a blue surgical suit, a doctor, and to his surprise, he understood the meaning of the terms people used. Vitals. Blood transfusion. Levofed. Even though they were all new terms. Double the amount of Levofed. Yes, sir. A new person appeared. He was a small man in a surgical gown, and the way he looked at the patient showed a strong will. 1, Kelly. In response to the man's words, the dreaming Raymond handed over the iron tools. Yes, Professor. It's right here. The man with the steel-like impression moved his iron tools. Clank, clank. The opening of the artery, which was bleeding profusely, was firmly identified, and the patient came back from the brink of death with a divine touch. Raymond was startled out of his dream. What was that? Was it an empty dream? It was too vivid a dream for that. Vital signs, blood transfusions, Kelly, etc., to name a few. All the concepts of the terms he heard for the first time in the dream were still vivid in his mind. That wasn't all. The contents of my dream. It was a splenectomy, operating on a patient with a ruptured spleen. Surgery. Splenectomy. Raymond thought of those terms. It's not some kind of pseudo. All the treatments on the continent of Leofantina, where Raymond lived, were done by healing. Surgery to open up the patient's abdomen to treat them? He had never heard of such a treatment. However, Raymond could feel it instinctively. He knew that the cure he saw in his dream was not a fake. In fact, it was a much better and more reliable treatment than the existing one. What the hell happened to me? That way he was confused. Something even more unbelievable happened. A message appeared in front of him. Congratulations on your awakening as a player. The player's occupation is Surgeon, Occupation Grade, SSS. Check out the status window. Status window? As he mumbled in his mind, the following message came to him. Player status. Name, Raymond. Class, Surgeon SSS. Occupational grade, Novice Resident. Level 1. Experience 0/50. Skill points 0. Auxiliary occupations, not activated. Skills. Stamina 3. Senses 2. Intellect 17. Attribute skills. Heart of Steel D. Ancillary skills. None. The player's level is too low to use the Surgeon ability. Treat your patients and gain experience. The higher your level, the more infinite growth you will be able to achieve in the future. Raymond blinked as he looked at the message. He didn't know what happened to him, but one thing was clear. An unbelievable miracle had come to him. Bellin Treatment Center. This was the clinic where Raymond was learning as an apprentice, and it was one of the most prestigious clinics in the kingdom's capital. However, the people in the clinic did not look at Raymond favorably at all. What is that pathetic bastard still doing here? Right. He doesn't even know what the theme is. How long does he plan to stay in the treatment center? Coming from a filthy illegitimate child background, the worst talent, not even in F grade, he was a miserable pathetic man despised by everyone. Shh. Be careful. What are you going to do if he hears that you're talking behind his back? So what? He's an illegitimate child anyway. Normally, Raymond would have given in to that snide remark, but not as much as he did today, because he was distracted by other things. Suddenly, he heard a voice throwing a tantrum. Hey, Raymond. Chief Healer Lance is calling. Pardon? Oh, you're clumsy and slow. You were born short and now you've eaten your ear off. Hurry up and go. Raymond rushed to Chief Healer Lance's office. Welcome, Senior. A young-looking healer greeted him. Greetings to the Chief Healer. Raymond bowed down and greeted. It's been 5 years since you became an apprentice, right, Senior? Raymond's chest heaved. Yes, that's right. Today I formally spoke with the other healers. It seems that the Bellin Healing Center is finding it difficult to take care of Senior any longer. I want you to quit your apprenticeship and leave the clinic, because with Senior's pathetic talent, becoming a healer seems like an eternal impossibility. Lance said coldly in a voice full of derision. I am revoking Senior's apprenticeship effective this date. Since you are not qualified to be a healer, please pack up and leave the clinic. I hope you enjoyed the video. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching and I'll see you next time.
The young man does not understand what he should do now. Working as a healer is the most worthy job of all those that an illegitimate child can claim. If he leaves the hospital, he will never be able to claim the title of healer again. Suddenly, an information window appears in front of the hero which says that he can treat people with surgery. Then a great idea appears in Layman's head that there is an opportunity to stay in the hospital. The hero shouts to the main healer that he will prove that he can also heal people. He asks to entrust him with a patient whom he can cure. Surely his healing skills are below F rank, but with his knowledge of medicine in his head, he will be able to become a healer. Healer Langs does not believe his words. He thinks that the hero believes that treating patients is akin to a child's game. However, he says that they just have a patient who may be suitable for the hero. If he copes and successfully cures the patient, then he will not be kicked out of the clinic. After a while, the hero comes to Rankin Street. He squeezes the documents and moves to the house of his first patient, and he is also very nervous because he has never treated people before. He understands that if he fails, he will be kicked out of the hospital, which means that he will lose the chance to pass the exam for the title of a real healer. Otherwise, he will become a healer without a diploma who will not be recognized for the rest of his life, and then he will go to prison if someone reports his illegal work. Thus, there will be more vile rumors that he is an illegitimate child and even a convicted one. The hero's father will be dragged into these rumors again, saying that it is not known how much longer he will disgrace this great man. The door opens abruptly in front of the hero and he falls, scattering all the documents he has on the patient. A girl came out to him and asked who he was. But when she saw the healer's coat of arms on his scattered papers, she immediately ran to him with tears in her eyes. Suddenly, a woman came out of the house and the girl joyfully started shouting to her that a healer from the Bellin Clinic had arrived. The woman can't believe her eyes that a healer has finally come to them. But the young man says that he is not a real healer. He is just a beginner. Then the woman replied that she doesn't care who he is because the main thing is to save her husband. At the clinic, they were told that they did not have enough funds to pay for expensive treatment, so she was refused and told that they would do nothing, and all she and her daughter could do now was watch her husband die. The hero examines the papers he has on the patient, and there it is indicated that he has a lesion of the gluteal zone. A man is sick with a serious illness called an abscess, which is a serious illness and a healer of at least B rank is needed to eliminate it. Of course, the poor family has nowhere to take money to pay for such a high-level healer, and now the man's family is forced to watch him die without the opportunity to help him. Here, the hero realizes that this situation is similar to his when he was still young. One day, he came to the clinic and asked for help. With all his might, he begged for it and said that he would earn not enough money because he only needed his mother to be cured. The cry of a little girl who asks to save her father pulls out of his thoughts. The hero pulls himself together and asks to show the patient. Suddenly, a system window appears in front which says that the hero decided to help the needy free of charge, so an additional bonus in the form of 5 skill points became available to him. The hero can get points from me by completing various tasks that the system will give, and he will be able to use these points to gain the skills necessary to treat patients. Suddenly, a golden system window appears which says about the beginning of a new task. The essence of it is that Layman must cure his first patient. The young man, after reading the last sentence, adjusts to the fact that now there will be a moment when he will be able to cure his first patient. And even if he came here so that he would not be kicked out of the clinic, but he must do everything he can to help the needy. The hero is sure that it is possible to cope because he has the necessary skills in the field of medicine to prevent serious diseases. Despite his lack of knowledge, he will be able to increase his experience by treating patients. If he treats patients, he will become an outstanding healer and gain the recognition of others. He approaches the patient who is bedridden and greets him. He suddenly feels a terrifying smell emanating from the man. Suddenly, the hero forgets what to do when meeting a patient, so he is very worried. Unexpectedly, the skill Steel Heart is activated, thanks to which the hero calms down. He asks the woman to show what is bothering the patient. She says that he has some kind of abscess on his buttocks, and instead of decreasing, it only increases every day. He also started to have a fever, and now he can't even get out of bed. The hero understands that he needs to act quickly, so first he checks his blood pressure, respiratory rate, and heart rate. Fortunately, sepsis, that is a purulent infection, has not yet begun, but we need to hurry because if the hero tries, then the patient can be saved. He says that now he needs to examine the painful place, then the woman turns her husband over and the hero sees the abscess. Using healing for such a case is extremely troublesome, but from a medical point of view, it is the most common disease. The woman asks the hero if it is possible to cure her husband because the clinic said that only a high-ranking healer can cope with such a disease. But Layman says that it is possible to cure the patient. He asks for help from a woman. He needs to boil water and then cool it down well. He also asks to prepare a sharp knife, and this phrase scares the woman very much. After the hero said that he still needed to be treated with fire, the woman asked how he was going to treat the patient. The young man replies that he is going to perform surgery. All preparations are completed and the hero is going to cut the tumor. Here the woman, frightened for her husband, grabs the young man by the hand because she does not understand why he is going to cut him. The young man replies that he is going to cure him. The woman does not understand why because healers should use healing. Layman says he will definitely save the man. He just needs to be trusted and he will be able to laugh with their daughter again. The woman lets go of the hero's hand and begins to pray. He is sure that he should not make a mistake. The hero recalls the operation where he was with a cold head but a passionate heart. In general medical knowledge, this is the way of thinking that a real surgeon should have. With the knowledge in the field of surgery that the hero has, the operation to remove the abscess is so simple that it is difficult to name both it and the operation. He carefully brings the knife and begins to cut the painful place, letting the pus flow out. He begins to write. The girl who is standing next to him screams, worrying about her father. Layman tries to collect his thoughts using his knowledge. First, he used a clean cloth to remove the leaking pus, and then he washed the abscess with boiled sterile water and removed the remaining pus. He also uses a knife to cut off all the dead tissue from the man's body. The operation is finally completed. The part with pus has been removed. The operation is completed by treating the wound, and then Layman uses a potion made from herbs and has natural antibiotic properties. Everything is complete. The woman approaches and asks if everything went well, to which the young man replies that everything ended well, and he asks to look after the patient. After a while, the man opens his eyes. The hero undertakes to check his temperature, and she is completely asleep. The woman thanks the hero but does not know how to express her gratitude even more. Layman replies that he just did what he had to. However, according to the woman, he was the only one who agreed to help. She says that she has been to many clinics. But all the healers said that her family's money would not even be enough to look at the patient, and thanks to the hero, she did not lose her husband and now her family is saved. Suddenly the girl runs to the young man and hugs him. Then he realizes that no one has ever said words of gratitude to him. It must be that the feeling he is experiencing now is joy after treating the patient. A few hours later, the hero stands in the office of the chief healer Langs and tells him that he was able to cure the patient. However, the healer does not believe him because an abscess is not a disease that can be cured by someone who is not even a B-rank healer. Healing is not an omnipotent force that cures all kinds of diseases just by putting your hand on the patient. In Liapontine, healing only increases vital energy, and vital energy gives several useful healing effects against some diseases, but it is completely useless against most of them. For purulent inflammation, which was treated by the hero, the healing force was no good and it would not have helped the patient in any way because no matter how much you increase the effectiveness, healing will be completely useless if pus is not removed inside the abscess and not only in the pus business. There will be too many problems with the Liapontine style of treatment. They don't even use this method properly because of their excessive dependence on healing. Lang says that he will go to find out everything personally. And if the hero lied, then he should be ready to pay for the lie. Calming himself, the young man was not afraid because he had done nothing wrong. Suddenly, a notification box appears in front of him indicating that he has completed the task and received ords, as well as his level has been raised and he has earned 10 skill points. Increasing the level occurs by gaining the required number of experience points. Thus, the hero increases his level, and as he increases, he can increase his characteristics. Once he reaches level 40, he will be able to raise his rank. The rank of the hero increases as the level increases, and from a novice resident, he can rise to a trained resident. Based on this, so far, the hero is a resident, but in the future, he will raise the level and become a specialist and then a professor. He understands that he will be able to level up in this way, and then he gets additional performance points for each new level. Layman reads about additional characteristics that he can study. For example, endurance is an ability that includes general physical characteristics such as agility, muscle mass, and so on. Then endurance will be extremely useful in the treatment of patients, and there is also perception here. Perception is an ability that allows you to cunningly control the physical body. And the more sensitive the hero is, the more smoothly he will be able to perform delicate movements when treating a patient. Intelligence is used to allow the hero to rationally use the available knowledge. There is also an additional characteristic, the name of which is hidden by question marks, and it will be available after certain requirements are met. Suddenly, Langs burst into the room. He had already managed to check on a patient who had recently been treated by Layman, but the healer decided that it was not the hero himself who cured him. Apparently, the patient was cured on his own. However, a promise is a promise, and the man agrees to give the hero a chance. After a while, they come to the medical aid station. Lang says he gives the hero 15 days to prove himself at this point, but this time he will not be able to count on his luck. To raise the level, Layman needs to take care of patients, so it's good that he came here since this is the closest place to the emergency department where he could apply his medical knowledge. However, there is one problem, which is that all the healers around him hate him. Everyone blamed him for having healing abilities below F rank, so no one wanted such an inept healer to walk around the medical aid station. Layman understands that in this place, he will not be given the opportunity to take care of the sick. But if he does not cure anyone in these 15 days, then the training in the hospital will be over, so the young man understands that he must do something. Next patient. Instead of waiting for the apple to fall from the tree, he discovers a guy named Hansen who was a student at the hospital. About such students, they usually say neither fish nor meat. The hero approaches the young man and asks if he is tired. Next to the hero, Hansen was just as uncomfortable as next to others, but at least he is the kindest among the students at the first aid station. Layman turns to him and says that it seems to him that the young man is very busy, so he asks for permission to do cleaning at the emergency room. He doesn't like hanging around while Hansen is working. The hero says that he will take care of patients if there are no healers nearby. For example, he will bandage them or apply medicinal herbs to them. Hansen understands that the older comrades will be angry if they find out that he allowed Layman to treat patients. However, the hero says that healers sit in their offices most of the time and come out only when new patients arrive, but now there will be no patients, so no one will know. Hansen doesn't want to agree, so the hero gets upset and asks to pretend that nothing happened. Cleaning the point is the most difficult, so if there is no such obligation on your shoulders, then it will be much easier to work. Still, Hansen agrees. While the senior healer was not seen, Layman was treating people, increasing his experience. Since the tasks were very simple, the hero received only 1 experience point each, but he does not get upset. It's been 3 days since he started working at the first aid station and has already reached level 4. Layman decides to spend his extra points on perception because the faster his senses are, the more good a surgeon he will become. He believes that if he continues to accumulate experience, one day he will become the best healer in the world and will bathe in luxury. The hero dreams of living in a 5-story mansion with marble floors and eating juicy steaks, as well as drinking the highest quality wine before going to bed. He will never again find himself in a deplorable situation due to lack of money, nor will he tolerate treatment worse than the lowest of the servants. Despite the fact that he was born into a noble family, he always had to hide in corners, living in the most luxurious place, and only have the opportunity to envy others. One of his regular patients was an elderly woman. She said that the hero is very handsome and kind, and also said that she has seen many healers in her lifetime, but the hero is the sweetest of all those she has seen. Lamont says that, of course, he should be nice because it's so upsetting when you're sick and they treat you badly. He experienced it when his mom was sick. The woman says that she was once treated by a healer, and it seems his name was Langs. He was skilled, but with this terrible evil so much that the woman's well-being deteriorated again. When she left, an information window appeared in front of the hero which informs that he was very nice to the patient, so he received the achievement Good Healer, and also his reputation was increased. He also received 5 skill points as a reward. These glasses are needed to obtain and improve the skills of a surgeon. Finally, the working day is over and now there is only cleaning left. The hero had no desire to do this, but he promised Hansen. Lament even wondered if he should make an effort at all if no one was watching this place. In Liechtenstein, they don't pay too much attention to cleanliness, so it doesn't look like Hansen tried so hard to keep order. However, slapping himself on the cheek, the hero puts his thoughts in order because dirt harms patients, and frequency is the basic rule, so he must endure even if it's hard and finally get out. He motivates himself with what he needs just to imagine his future luxurious life to cheer up, namely beefsteaks every day. Finally, everything was tidied up. The heroes decide that when he becomes successful in the future, he will definitely hire cleaners because now his whole body hurts, and he even thought to increase his stamina. A system window popped up which stated that the hero had cleaned up at first aid station and also received an achievement, an improvement, 10 skill points, and bonus points for excellent work. Now he has access to the purchase of skills in the store where a special offer is valid for the first purchase. For 40 points, he can buy a skill of a unique rank. He is given a choice of 3 skills: Iron Man Strength, Dexterous Hands, and Sage Thighs. The hero wants to choose everything, but you can only choose one. Suddenly, healers burst into the emergency room. An emergency case was received where the patient vomited blood. Layman understands that if he vomits blood, then it is very bad and a healer of at least a rank is needed here. Healing is a force that stimulates vital energy, and stimulation of vital energy activates coagulation, but in situations where bleeding is abundant, the effectiveness of such an action decreases. At the Ballon Clinic, only Director Bucks has a rank skills. There are also several B ranks here, but at this rate, the patient will die. There is a technique for performing surgery on such patients, but Layman cannot perform it because he is only a novice resident, so here you need the title of an experienced resident. Here, the main healer, Langs, comes to the patient who examines him. Director Bex is currently out of town to cure a nobleman. The patient started vomiting blood again, and by chance, drops of blood fell on Lang's hand. He says with disgust that he can't do anything, so the patients must be sent back. After hearing this, the hero wants to try to save him. The healer says that healing is useless here, but Layman still tries to persuade him to let him try. Langs replies that since the hero is so worried about this person, why not try to cure him on his own? However, the probability of failure is too high. And if something happens to the patient, the hero will be blamed and he will also be expelled from the clinic. A system window appears that informs that an unforeseen quest has begun, the essence of which is to become a caring healer and cure the patient with the help of willpower, despite the low level of skill. So far, the hero has held on with all his hands and feet, so if something goes wrong, then everything will be over for him. He looks at a patient who, dying, asks for help. Layman can't do anything because it's not in his power, but if no one helps, then the man will just die. The hero understands that he needs to think rationally. That is, even if he tries, nothing will come out, so it would be wiser to just continue to take care of less seriously ill people and in the future find another opportunity to gain experience. Suddenly, the Steel Heart skill is activated and Layman begins to possess steel determination and a firm will. He recalls the Hippocratic Oath, which states that the swearing asks to be allowed to practice medicine and solemnly swears to devote his life to the service of humanity. Even if it is akin to the impossible, he cannot abandon a dying person. Layman asks to be allowed to try to cure this patient. Langs is sure that the hero just went crazy, but still allows him. However, he clarifies so that the hero does not forget to take responsibility for the result later. Other healers leave and the hero remains alone. He is not sure that he will be able to cope alone because it is quite difficult to carry out the operation alone. When suddenly Hansen calls out to him, who offers the young man his help because he also wants this man not to die. The hero feels relieved because now he has an assistant, so he thanks Hansen for his support and help. The situation is urgent, so there is no time to explain. Layman tells his assistant that you need to prepare a knife boiled in sterile clean water to begin with and then treat it with fire. He also needs a thin thread and disinfect it with medicinal herbs. Hansen doesn't understand why all these things are needed. With the help of a hallucinogen, the hero put the patient to sleep and anesthetized him. Fortunately, he also prepared catgut, that is, a natural absorbable surgical suture material. Blamond had prepared it in advance just in case because it was easy to get since it is used by magicians from the wizard tower. First, you need to disinfect the place on the body where the surgery will be performed. Here the young man begins to cut his skin tissue with a knife, and this scares Hansen very much. Heroes see fat and muscles covered in blood. He knew how to open the abdominal cavity from the knowledge he had gained. However, it was terrible to see it with his own eyes, and as a result, the young man's head empties. The hero begins to shake, but suddenly the skill steel heart is activated, which allows the young man to become more adamant. Layman thinks about wealth, mail, and calms down. He just needs to follow the knowledge of surgery. He must perform a median laparotomy. That is a method of surgical intervention by dissecting the tissues in the area of the anterior abdominal wall. Hansen is just terrified because he doesn't understand what the heroes are doing to the patient and should he stop him. However, he sees the confident look of the hero and does not risk stopping him. Yellow fluid oozes from the duodenum. This is a perforated ulcer, so it is necessary to bind the artery and block the hole. A perforated ulcer is a through defect in the wall of the stomach and duodenum, as in this case with access to the abdominal cavity or retroperitoneal space. Here, the hero asks Hansen to lift one red organ. The young man is surprised but still helps the hero. Now you need to cut out the perforation area with a scalpel. The hands of the young man do not obey at all. And at this rate, the operation will end very badly, so the hero decides to buy the skill-dexterous hands of the surgeon. Good stamina and intelligence are undoubtedly important, but more importantly, they are able to save the patient. He uses the skill and his perception increases from 6 to 16 and the fingertips become more substantial. Of course, it's still a little unusual, but the hero moves gracefully really and the feeling that he lacks something. He asks Hansen for a threat because first he needs to tie the artery and stop the bleeding. Now you need to close the hole in the duodenum. Then you need to take the tongue of the momentum of a suitable size and block the perforation of the intestine with it, applying nodal sutures. And finally, it remains only to check the vagus nerve, which is associated with the secretion of gastric acid, and also remove the spread gastric juice with clean water, and finally, do not sew it up. The operation is over. The hero got his first experience in abdominal surgery. He received the achievement of the father surgeon, that is, the discoverer of surgery for future generations. The hero also received a lot of skill points and a bonus to level up. Suddenly, his legs give way and he falls and tears begin to flow from his eyes. Finally, he did it, cured the patient. After a while, the chief healer learns that Layman did a good job and cured a patient who vomited blood. He couldn't believe his ears because it's impossible, so he decides to make sure of everything personally. Legs give way and he falls and tears begin to flow from his eyes. Finally, he did it, cured the patient. After a while, the chief healer learns that Layman did a good job and cured a patient who vomited blood. He couldn't believe his ears because it's impossible, so he decides to make sure of everything personally. Langs believes that there is no way the hero can heal patients with blood vomiting and his abilities are below F rank. He bursts into the room and sees how the patient is having fun and sweetly communicating with his healer. The man thanks the main character for the rescue. The young man answers him that he should not forget about caution. Langs comes into the room and asks who cured the patient, or perhaps Director Bucks did it at all. The healer still does not believe him because he thinks that he is lying since he does not reach the F rank, so how could he cure a sick person here? The young man replies that he did not use healing. However, he understands that the truth cannot be told. He invents a legend that he treats patients with the help of medical techniques that were used in ancient times. Yes, it was for such a case that the hero came up with a story. Layman says that some time ago when he was running errands in the northern region he lost his balance and fell off a cliff unexpectedly for himself and then wandered into the ancient ruins and there was able to comprehend the ancient method of healing, which is called medical techniques. Langs doesn't believe him. Suddenly the patient gets out of bed and says that it's too noisy here. He calls the main healer and lifts up his shirt and then asks to see him, which has proof that it was the main character who saved him. There was a huge seam on his stomach, by the way. The man adds that he remembered the main healer because it was he who asked people to leave him to die. The main healer did not help himself and now he is trying to denigrate either the healer who pulled the man out of the other world. He takes a chamber pot and throws it right at the main healer, dousing him from head to toe. The patient is very angry. He shouts at him, insulting him and asks him to get out of here right now. The main healer runs away. The patient apologizes to the main character for soiling the room. However, the young man replies that, thanks to him, he feels better. At this time, Langs is trying to understand the words of the young man, namely that he was talking about some secret ancient techniques. People started discussing the main character saying that he was lucky to stop the bleeding. The hero knew that people's opinion about him would not change just because he cured one patient. Here, Hansen turns to the hero. The young man does not say anything and takes away Lamon's mop. That from now on, he will be engaged in cleaning because this is his job. It seemed to the hero that Hansen looked at him differently. Behind the wall was Langs, who looked at the hero quite differently. His gaze started from mocking to a complete desire to kill. In the past, when people behaved this way towards heroes, he didn't know what to do, but now he doesn't care. Everyone should keep watching. And when he eventually becomes the best healer, then everyone will dance with him. Hear the main healer Langs. The hero sneaks up from behind and talks about his skills. He offers him to go to the birthday festival at the royal palace as an invited healer. This shocks the hero. The festival is organized in honor of the birthday. This banquet is also dedicated to the birthday of the very first king, a grandiose festival at which all the capital's nobility gather. It is so large-scale that there are not enough healers at the royal palace because each clinic sends its own people there. Being sent to the festival at the royal palace means that your abilities have been recognized, and it is a great honor for any healer. However, the hero does not like it. The chief healer, Lang, says that Lamond is still a student and only the really hopeful gets such a chance. And the hero cured a patient who vomited blood, so he definitely deserved the right to participate. The hero believes that Langs does not give them the opportunity but just wants to set them up because for the hero, the royal palace is hell. The fact is that he has 3 stepbrothers who constantly bullied him. That time was like hell. If we compare life in the palace and life in the clinic, then the latter will definitely seem like paradise because it was because of the hero that his father's dignity was tarnished. He was a hidden prince. The Kingdom of Houston is a country where chivalry and nobility prevail, so it does not recognize illegitimate children. The hero, the only mistake that the king of a great country once made. Therefore, he is bad because he should not exist because he defames the name of his royal majesty. The heroes decide to clarify whether it is really necessary to send him to the festival. Lang says that if he does not like it, then let him not go. Only the hero should not forget that the completion of his training is in the hands of the main healer. Layman really wants to hit him, but he can't do it. Suddenly, an information window appears in front of him with a new task which is called the Guardian of the Banquet. The essence of this task is that a large number of people gather at the banquet and it is unknown what kind of emergency situation may occur. The task of the hero, as a healer, is to make the banquet without victims. The hero notices that the reward for this task is very great. However, he is worried about the high complexity because, most likely, some very serious urgent incident or something is going to happen. Layman agrees to go. He asks Langs to promise that he will give him permission to take an official qualified exam for a healer at the end of the banquet. Even if everyone present at the clinic behaves ridiculously unfairly, the only reason why the hero still remains at the Bellin clinic is the desire to take the qualification exam for a healer. He can't go to the palace without asking for something in return. A few days later came the royal festival. 5 years ago, the hero left the royal palace and here he is again. He's thinking about going back to the Bellanda clinic. He doesn't understand how he can help an urgent patient at all when his healing powers are below F rank. There will be a lot of skilled healers at the banquet. However, if healing is useless for this person, then he may die. The young man understands that he should not avoid the palace because he has done nothing wrong. He didn't want to be born out of wedlock, so it's the fault of his father, the king, and the hero is just a victim. As a result, an information window appears again which says that the hero decided to look fear in the eye, so Steelheart reacted to his concern. He calms down. Lamond understands that he should not be discouraged because who knows, he may be able to save a high-ranking nobleman and he will receive a generous reward. However, before entering the castle, the hero must acquire useful skills. He looks at the profile menu which states that for skill points, he can acquire any skill he wants. However, due to his low F rank class, there are some restrictions, so the skills available for purchase are divided into 2 groups, attribute skills which can be purchased 5 pieces and passive skills which can be purchased 3 pieces. The hero decides to look at the attribute skills available for purchase and he sees several types of basic magic which means he can learn magic for points. He decides to buy a skill called the method of dealing with jerks because there are a lot of them among the noble people. After a while, the banquet begins. People raise their glasses to his royal majesty, to the king, because no one can compare with the greatness of his majesty. Thanks to this man, the Kingdom of Houston has become so developed. He was an outstanding knight and military commander as well as a politician who thinks about his people. He was a monarch who listened to the nobility and no one dared to mock the king. That's why all the people spoke badly about the hero, because if it wasn't for him, the king would have been just perfect. The banquet also discussed the main character, calling him the hidden prince who left the castle 5 years ago. There was a lot of gossip about him, but right now he was standing in a group of healers. Suddenly one of the people notices a young man in the corner who looked like a hidden prince. The hero rejoices in his steel heart because before he would have been simply discouraged catching such glances on himself, but today he does not care about anything. He thinks that today he shines like never before. Suddenly, the hero notices Princess Sophia. The girl had a look as if she was looking at a mistake that has not been fixed yet. However, if you compare this girl with the main princess, then she is just a dissatisfied teenage girl. She did not mock the hero because she simply did not have the strength to do so because, like the first queen, her health was not good. Even now, her complexion is still pale, so the hero thinks that she is still not cured. Suddenly, he hears a voice from the side. A red-haired young man, who was the fourth prince named Saddle, approaches him. As a child, the young man often beat the main character. And after this cruel childhood, his scars on his body still have not healed. He still can't move like a mouse in front of a snake. Saddle is very angry because Layman dares to ignore him. The hero was very scared at the sight of his brother. The steel hard skill is reactivated and he is no longer afraid of anything because his will is firm again. Saddle is designated as an extremely high complexity jerk. The skill method of dealing with jerks is activated. Suddenly, the hero makes a bow and greets the great fourth prince of the Houston Kingdom. The young man is surprised because the main character does not look scared, although he used to be so afraid that he could not say a word. Lament is trying to somehow play this situation by asking what brought the fourth prince here because this is a zone for healers and if he came here, it means he feels bad. Saddle doesn't understand what's wrong with the hero. He says he feels fine. The hero tries to send off the fourth prince as he feels well, so he sends him to the other side where the banquet is located. Suddenly, he sees a man who is crouched down and tries to help him, ignoring the fourth prince. The hero again turns to Saddle, hinting that he would leave faster. Saddle tries to humiliate the hero somehow, saying that he really feels bad, so he is in the zone for healers. He says that he has been feeling tired lately and he has no strength at all. Since healers believe that such big symptoms are the most difficult to deal with, he decides to check how the hero copes. The young man, after examining the fourth prince, concludes that he is suffering from alcohol poisoning. It turns out that the fourth prince drank every day. Excessive amounts of alcohol can cause a functional disorder of the body. Therefore, most likely, this is the cause of fatigue, His Highness, the fourth prince. The hero advises him to refrain from drinking alcoholic beverages and have a good rest. Saddle gets upset and leaves in a bad mood.
With a calm smile on his face, Raymond respectfully asked Prince Saddle to take care of his health. The prince, standing tall in his regal attire, could only nod, unable to refuse as Raymond showered him with sincere compliments. As Raymond inquired if the prince had any other health issues, the prince simply shook his head, giving a brief and final no. Raymond wished him a good time at the banquet, his voice filled with pleasant courtesy. But deep inside, Raymond was overjoyed. He had successfully dealt with the villain, the one man he had feared. Saddle was puzzled. Why was Raymond behaving like this? Why wasn't he trembling in fear like he used to? Before, Raymond would have been too scared to even speak in the prince's presence, let alone joke around. But today he felt victorious. Raymond knew why. He had made the right decision when he bought that special skill. Without it, he would never have been able to face the prince so boldly. As he glanced at the prince, a thought crossed his mind. This man is no threat at all. For the first time in a long while, Raymond felt completely at ease. He even started bantering with the prince, making light jokes that subtly poked fun at the man who once made his life difficult. This playful exchange caught the attention of Princess Sophia, who quietly approached. Raymond turned abruptly, startled by her sudden appearance. In an instant, Raymond bowed deeply, his hand placed firmly on his chest in a gesture of respect. But the princess was not amused. Her gaze, sharp and unwavering, reflected the shock of what she had overheard. She had listened to every word of Raymond's conversation with the prince, and she wasn't about to let it go unnoticed. "You've changed a lot in these last 5 years, Raymond," she remarked coldly, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade. She didn't stop there. Her next word stung. "You used to be worthless. Like garbage." Raymond, taken aback, blinked in confusion. Was that supposed to be an insult? He couldn't tell. After a brief pause, he replied with a straight face, "You haven't changed at all." That remark hit Princess Sophia harder than he realized. Her expression shifted ever so slightly, betraying the hurt behind her otherwise stoic facade. She had hoped she was no longer seen as the horrible person she once was, but Raymond's words felt like confirmation that nothing had changed. Noticing her discomfort, Raymond quickly tried to reassure her, softly complimenting her beauty, hoping to end the conversation on a more positive note. But Sophia seemed eager to leave. She claimed she wasn't feeling well, her voice strained and distant. Raymond's instincts as a healer kicked in immediately. "What's wrong?" he asked, concern lacing his tone. But the princess brushed him off, waving away his questions. He knew she was unwell, her pale face betraying her words. As Princess Sophia turned away, her two maids hurried to follow her, their anxious eyes darting between Raymond and their princess. Though she was rude and quick to anger, Sophia was a true princess in every sense. She took her place on the throne at the head of the banquet hall, a picture of grace and power. The room erupted into cheers as the banquet officially began. Princess Sophia rose to give her speech, her voice clear and authoritative as she welcomed everyone to the celebration. She spoke with confidence, congratulating the gathered nobles on this joyous occasion. But as her speech continued, Raymond, standing among the crowd, noticed something was wrong. The princess's movements became sluggish. Her face grew paler and her once strong voice began to falter. Raymond's heart raced as he watched her closely. Sweat glistened on her forehead, her hand clutching her chest as if the very act of breathing had become a struggle. The crowd seemed oblivious, but Raymond sensed the danger. And then, in the middle of her speech, it happened. Princess Sophia staggered, her legs giving out beneath her as she collapsed to the ground. A wave of panic swept through the banquet hall. Screams filled the air as nobles rushed forward, trying to help, but Princess Sophia lay unconscious, her face devoid of life. A group of men shouted for a healer, their voices tinged with fear. The older nobles hurried toward the fallen princess, their faces grim, while others stood frozen in shock. The atmosphere was chaotic, but Raymond remained still, his mind racing. The healers arrived in an instant, and one young healer, a boy barely out of his teens, stepped forward. He placed his hands over the princess, green healing magic swirling in the air. But to everyone's horror, it didn't work. The magic flickered, but the princess's condition didn't improve. The healer's face paled, his eyes wide with fear. He stepped back, shaking his head in disbelief. Even the best magic couldn't save her. Raymond watched from the sidelines, his thoughts a whirlwind. Should he step in? Could he risk it? As an apprentice, he wasn't supposed to interfere. But if he did nothing, Princess Sophia would die. She hadn't apologized to him yet, not properly. He couldn't let her die without making her apologize for all the torment she had caused him. With a newfound determination, Raymond stepped forward, his voice loud and unwavering. "I'll treat her myself," he declared. The healers, startled, turned to him in disbelief. The lead healer, Ing, tried to stop him. "What are you doing? Get out of here," he shouted, but Raymond refused to back down. "Time is running out," Raymond yelled, his voice cutting through the noise of the crowd. He pushed past the healers, his nonchalant expression masking the fear and pressure building inside him. He approached Princess Sophia, kneeling beside her motionless body. The room fell into a tense silence as Raymond began checking for a pulse. His hands shook slightly as he felt her neck. Nothing. No pulse. Her heart had stopped. Healing magic wouldn't help now. Without hesitation, Raymond began chest compressions, his movements quick and precise. The nobles shouted angrily, accusing him of harming the princess. But Raymond ignored them, focusing solely on saving her life. Sweat dripped down his face as he continued, his arms burning with effort. The room erupted into chaos, but Raymond remained focused. Suddenly the king arrives there and stares at the situation, and asks the healers can they save Sophia. All healers stayed silent with a sorry face. After seeing that, the king commands the guards to let Raymond try. Raymond continues to give chest compressions to the princess, but her heart won't start beating. Raymond realizes that if this keeps up she'll die. Nobility will imply that he is the one who killed the princess. Suddenly, he had an idea. His mind raced back to the blue screen, the skill menu. If healing magic couldn't work, maybe something else would. In a flash, he accessed the blue window and scrolled through the options. His fingers hovered over a selection: basic lightning magic. It was risky, but it was his only chance. With a quick breath, Raymond made his choice. Raymond confidently applied his newly acquired skill, his movements precise. One hand slipped under the princess's right collarbone while the other rested beneath her left arm, near her armpit. He focused, and in an instant, blue sparks of electricity began to crackle around Princess Sophia's body. But just as Raymond began to hope, a royal guard leapt forward. She pushed Raymond to the ground, his body crashing into the floor with a heavy thud. The cold, sharp edge of her sword was at his throat before he could react. "What have you done to the princess?" she spat, her grip on the sword tightening. The tension in the air was thick as the other guards surrounded Raymond, ready to strike him down where he knelt. The room had grown still. Raymond raised his hands in surrender, his voice calm but urgent. "I wasn't attacking her. I was trying to save her life." His plea was met with skeptical glares. The king ordered the healers to examine Princess Sophia. The highest-ranking healers rushed forward, their robes brushing the floor as they gathered around the princess's still form. Healer Aang, trembling with uncertainty, placed his fingers on Sophia's artery, feeling for a pulse. His eyes widened, and he gasped in disbelief as he felt the faint but unmistakable thump of her heartbeat. The princess, her heart, it's beating again. Aang's voice broke through the tense silence, and whispers of astonishment rippled through the crowd like wildfire. "This is incredible." Raymond remained on the ground, still at sword point, but a wave of relief washed over him. He exhaled deeply, his eyes closing for a brief moment. It had worked. Against all odds, he had saved her. The king, his regal figure towering over the crowd, approached Raymond slowly, his expression unreadable. The crowd parted in hushed awe as the king stopped in front of the young man who had just performed the impossible. The king asked, "What did you do?" Raymond, still kneeling, replied carefully, his voice steady, "Healing wouldn't have worked, Your Majesty. I used another method, a technique I learned long ago." The king's brows furrowed, his arms crossing in front of him. The silence stretched as Raymond's words hung in the air. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the king sighed deeply, turning to address the hall. "The banquet is over," he announced, his voice carrying throughout the room. "We are done here." As he began to walk away, the king suddenly paused. "Wait until I summon you," he said, his voice unexpectedly soft, and then he was gone. Raymond blinked in confusion. He had not expected those words from the king, words that carried neither anger nor dismissal. For the first time in his life, Raymond felt seen by his father. Raymond's mind wandered back. He had been just a child, weak, frail, and starving, alone in the slums after his mother had died. He could still remember the moment the king had found him, his body so malnourished that it barely seemed alive. The king had picked him up in his arms, his face unreadable as he silently carried Raymond back to the palace. It was the only time his father had ever shown him any warmth. From that day on, Raymond had lived in the palace, surrounded by people who blame him for tarnishing the image of the king by being an illegitimate child. All his siblings used to bully him, and everyone treat him worse than slave. But his father had never spoken to him again, until now. As Raymond stood in the now empty banquet hall, a blue screen flashed before his eyes. It was a notification: quest completed. 30 skill points earned. He grinned, his chest swelling with pride. Not only had he saved Princess Sophia, but he had also completed the quest and earned a significant reward. His reputation had grown, and his skill set had expanded. He stood a little taller, his head held high, feeling a sense of victory that he had never felt before. The time had come to claim his reward. Raymond was summoned to the king's throne room, the path lined with noblemen on both sides. Their eyes followed him as he walked, their murmurs filled with curiosity and surprise. Raymond approached the throne, where his father stood, the regal figure looming over him. He bowed deeply, introducing himself as a servant to His Majesty. The king narrowed his eyes, his gaze intense. "What method did you use to save my daughter?" Raymond took a deep breath, carefully crafting his response. "It was an ancient secret technique, Your Majesty," he explained. "One I discovered while wandering the ruins long ago." He spoke of the ancient ruins and the mysterious powers they held, weaving a tale of forgotten techniques that were unlike traditional healing methods. The king's right-hand man, standing nearby, hesitated for a moment, but eventually, he believed Raymond's story. The king, though clearly not pleased, did not press further. "You saved the princess, you shall be rewarded." Raymond's heart raced as the king asked him what reward he desired. Wealth, jewels, a lifetime of luxury, anything was within his grasp. But Raymond wasn't interested in riches. He had a bigger goal in mind. "I am a healer," Raymond said, his voice firm. "What I desire is the ability to continue using my medical technique. I need your approval, Your Majesty." He realizes that if he continues to use them, the healers might accuse him of practicing sorcery, and the Tower of Healing could ban the technique altogether. To prevent this, Raymond knows he needs the king's official recognition. Without hesitation, the king agrees to his request and gives a formal speech acknowledging the technique as a legitimate form of treatment. Raymond is overjoyed. The king's approval is more than he could have hoped for. Yet, Raymond isn't entirely satisfied. He's only getting started and decides to make one more request. With eloquence, Raymond explains that he doesn't want gold or silver. All he desires is to be honored as a healer. The king, perhaps not understanding the gravity of the request, initially seems puzzled. Raymond, with a sorrowful look, asks for something that seems less substantial, the bearer's medal, if His Majesty would permit it. The king is visibly surprised by such an odd request from the young hidden prince, and the nobles whisper in shock. After all, the bearer's medal is awarded for extraordinary service to the empire, not something granted lightly. Everyone in the room is astonished. They had assumed Raymond was nothing more than a bastard, but now they see a generous, kind-hearted young man. Some think he is too simple-minded for a healer. Raymond's fame rises in the eyes of those around him, for his words move them deeply. But Raymond's intentions are far from naive. By receiving the bearer's medal, he earns honor and can elevate himself to nobility. It is the best possible outcome for him in this situation. The king, still surprised by the young man's humility, asks if the medal will truly be enough. Having ruled for years, no one had ever made such a request, as most seek wealth. Raymond assures the king that the medal will suffice. The nobles, astonished and delighted by Raymond's modesty, cheer. Raymond's reputation grows even more, and the king has no choice but to honor his request and bestow the bearer's medal upon him. Raymond bows before the king and expresses his gratitude. The festival ends, and the healers leave the royal palace. Raymond, immensely satisfied, could not have expected such a result. As the king watches Raymond leave through the window, he reflects on the young man. His right-hand man, Gelman, remarks how much Raymond has changed and that he is no longer just a child with basic desires. Gelman remembers the day he first encountered Raymond in the slums, a frail child on the brink of death. The king had made the decision to save him, even though the boy was illegitimate, and to give him a chance at life. Raymond's mother had left the palace after discovering the king's identity, choosing to leave quietly to protect his honor. Gelman continues to express his concerns that acknowledging Raymond might damage the king's reputation, but the king is resolute and leaves the room without discussing it further. Gelman reflects that, after the situation with the princess, it might have been better for Raymond to have been the illegitimate son of a commoner than to endure years of abuse in the palace. He had advised the king that Raymond, once mastering his technique, could achieve great things, despite the difficulties faced by illegitimate children. The king, mulling over Gelman's words, departs the room in haste, while Gelman is left feeling frustrated. Meanwhile, Raymond returns to the clinic where he is studying. Unsure of how his fellow students will react to his achievements, he walks in proudly, his head held high. His fame has already reached the clinic, and students swarm him with questions. Raymond relishes the attention, knowing that just a short time ago, they had viewed him as nothing more than trash. Even Langs, the chief healer, is now cautious of him. But Raymond hasn't forgotten Lang's promise of a qualifying exam. Langs, seething with anger, addresses Raymond with a Sir prefix, confirming that he is now eligible for the exam. Raymond, mocking Langs, repeats his name with the title, Sir, enjoying his newfound status as a nobleman. Furious, Langs begrudgingly apologizes for his improper tone and formally greets Raymond according to etiquette. The chief healer, though furious, is forced to bow before him. Raymond savors the moment, though he knows he cannot retaliate against those who once tormented him, for he lacks the authority and power to exact justice. He must be content with his current victories. Raymond focuses on gaining the respect of his fellow healers, working diligently and treating as many patients as he can. As his experience grows, so does his intelligence and skill. Even the patients begin to praise his humility and dedication. Hansen, another healer, starts observing Raymond closely, though it's unclear whether out of admiration or something else. One day, alarms ring out as a patient with a severe stomach wound arrives at the aid station. The healers gather around him, trying to treat his injuries. Raymond thinks to himself that a B-rank healer like Langs should be able to handle this case, but Langs just stands there, staring at the bloodied patient. Raymond is puzzled. Why isn't Langs doing anything? Though the patient is gravely injured, he had walked several meters on his own, losing a lot of blood in the process. He keeps muttering about leaked information and collapsing from exhaustion. Meanwhile, in Augusta County, a noble estate, a dark-haired young man speaks with Count Augustus about the hidden prince's deeds. The count, who had suspected Raymond of being untrustworthy at the banquet, acknowledges that Raymond is skilled but believes he will never become a prince. The count's family supports the third prince, Liberton, though it is more likely the second prince, Karen, will take the throne. The count hands a letter to Killian, instructing him to deliver it to the third prince, while cautioning him to avoid drawing attention from the second prince's watchful eyes. Everything happened so quickly. The attacker had likely been sent by the second prince, and though Killian barely fended him off, he lost a significant amount of blood. He somehow managed to stagger to the nearest clinic, nearly unconscious, but determined to survive. When the healers saw Killian, they were horrified and immediately sounded the alarm for an emergency. Despite being gravely wounded, Killian remained standing, pleading for the strength to save his life. The healers scrambled around him in a panic, urgently calling for Chief Healer Langs. Killian was confident he wouldn't die here. He believed they would save him. But to Killian's surprise, Chief Healer Langs showed no urgency. He simply stood by, observing. It quickly became clear why. Langs coldly declared that he had no intention of treating a beggar like Killian. He didn't want this man on the clinic's records, nor did he want to deal with him for days. Langs ordered that Killian be sent to another clinic, one meant for commoners. Killian, struggling to speak, tried to inform Langs that he was from the noble Augustus family, but he couldn't form the words, coughing up blood as he gasped for breath. Langs turned away with contempt, declaring that someone of Killian's low status couldn't possibly receive treatment in such a prestigious clinic. At that moment, Raymond stepped in, challenging Langs. He pointed out that no healer at the nearby clinic was qualified to treat such a serious case, and if they sent Killian away, he would die. Langs, mocking Raymond, sarcastically told him that if he wanted to treat Killian, he was welcome to try. With a smirk, Langs taunted Raymond, saying that if he had the skill to cure a princess, surely he could handle a beggar. The other disciples and healers whispered amongst themselves. Langs clearly didn't believe in Raymond, thinking his previous success was just a stroke of luck. The truth stung Raymond. His rank wasn't high enough to handle such a complex surgery. He hesitated, unsure of what to do. Langs, seizing the moment, ordered Raymond to either treat the patient or personally throw him out of the clinic. To drive the point home, he suggested that Raymond escort Killian to the commoner clinic himself. Anger burned inside Raymond at the injustice of dividing people into rich and poor when it came to something as crucial as healing. His goal was to become a skilled healer, and though he had ambitions of wealth, he believed that no healer should abandon a dying patient. With newfound determination, Raymond locked eyes with Langs and boldly declared that he would cure Killian. Activating his heart of steel, Raymond remained calm and composed, while Langs, confident of his failure, left Raymond alone with the patient. The others quickly dispersed, leaving Raymond to figure out how he would perform the surgery. Staring at Killian's weakened form, Raymond felt unsure of himself. He knew that if he failed, it could ruin everything for him. But before he could dwell on his fears, a voice interrupted his thoughts. Hansen, with fire in his eyes, offered to help. Raymond, thrilled but taken aback by Hansen's willingness, eagerly accepted. Grabbing Hansen's hand, he thanked him sincerely. Raymond assigned Hansen the same tasks as before: boil the water, sterilize the knife and needle. Together, they prepared for the difficult operation. Killian had lost too much blood, and a transfusion was necessary, but they didn't have the proper equipment for such a procedure. Raymond began to think through each step carefully. First, he injected some blood, then tried to stop the bleeding, activating his nimble surgeon's hands. Raymond moved with the precision of a seasoned doctor, while Hansen stood by, handing him the instruments. Slowly, Raymond made an incision in Killian's abdomen, his hands more steady than ever before. But something wasn't right. Blood was pouring out, more than expected. Hansen, terrified, asked if it was normal for there to be so much blood. Raymond didn't answer, frozen as he stared at the organ. Panic rising, Hansen shouted at Raymond, snapping him back to reality. Realizing he had forgotten Hansen's presence, Raymond instructed him to wipe away the blood with a sterile cloth. As Hansen carefully wiped the blood, Raymond inspected the organs, trying to locate the source of the excessive bleeding, wondering what he could use as a substitute. Sensing something was wrong, Hansen watched as Raymond weighed his options. Desperate, Raymond turned to his magical abilities. Opening the attribute screen, he selected fire magic. His heart raced with worry. Fire could burn the patient if he wasn't careful. The blue screen assured him that his intelligence was high enough to control the magic. Raymond felt relieved. He hadn't trained in these skills for nothing. With utmost caution, Raymond prepared for the cauterization. He raised his left hand and summoned a small fireball into his palm. Hansen, stunned by the sight, was speechless. It was pure magic, something he hadn't expected from Raymond. But Raymond focused, using the fire to carefully stop the bleeding. Afterward, he asked Hansen for a thread to stitch up the damaged veins. With his deft surgeon's hands activated, Raymond worked methodically, making suture after suture with ease. Hansen, in awe, watched as Raymond expertly finished the operation, placing each stitch as if he had been practicing for years. When the bleeding had completely stopped, Raymond smiled, relieved. Hansen, still shocked, asked Raymond about his ability to use magic. Raymond casually replied that magic was just a hobby, something he dabbled in during his free time. He explained that he had gained his magical abilities while exploring ancient ruins, which had since collapsed, meaning no one else could access them. Hansen realized that Raymond was only talking to deflect from telling the full truth. He respected Raymond's choice, knowing that anyone in his position would want to keep such power secret. There wasn't much left to finish the surgery, just flushing everything out and repairing the mesentery. Hansen was in awe of Raymond's abilities. No matter what technique he used, Raymond was saving lives that others couldn't. Hansen even began to wonder if he could learn this technique himself. After a brief reflection, he concluded that Raymond would likely refuse to teach him. The surgery was finally complete, and Killian's life was no longer in danger. The blue screen in front of Raymond displayed a significant increase in experience, and his level had gone up. Hansen, seeing Raymond lost in thought, asked if the procedure was finished. A satisfied Raymond turned to him, grabbed his hands firmly, and began to thank him profusely for his assistance. He praised Hansen, emphasizing that he couldn't have saved the patient without him, just as he hadn't been able to do it alone the last time. Hansen was stunned by Raymond's words, feeling a mix of shyness and euphoria at the unexpected praise. Raymond was certainly an unusual young man. Soon after, Killian began to regain consciousness, much to the delight of the two healers. Still somewhat disoriented, Killian asked what clinic he was in. With a smile, Raymond and Hansen explained that due to the severity of his wounds, he had been treated at the Bellin Clinic. Killian mentioned the White Clinic, recalling that the chief healer wanted to send him there. Just then, Count Augustus burst into the room, shouting his son's name. The Count rushed to Killian's bedside, calling him son. Both Raymond and Hansen froze, realizing that the patient they thought was a beggar was actually the noble son of Count Augustus. Killian, now more alert, recognized his father and addressed him. The Count grasped his son's hand tightly, relieved that he had been treated at the Bellin Clinic, where the healers were highly skilled. He asked who had saved his son, assuming it must have been the director or Langs. Hansen, unable to contain his pride, stepped forward, his head held high, and declared that it was Sir Raymond who had saved Killian. Raymond stood by with a satisfied expression. Killian turned to Raymond in surprise, asking if he was the same Raymond who had saved the princess. Hansen and Raymond didn't hold anything back. They told the Count everything. Langs had ordered that Killian be sent to the White Clinic, refusing to treat him, but Raymond had intervened and taken on the risk to save his son. Count Augustus was clearly shocked. Killian, thinking back on his appearance, suggested that Langs had mistaken him for a beggar, which is why he was treated so poorly. The Count's face darkened with rage, and it looked as if he might explode at any moment. Chief Healer Langs was informed of Count Augustus's arrival and immediately leapt from his chair, his face lighting up with excitement. He pushed past everyone, eager to greet such a distinguished nobleman. Rushing into the clinic's aid station, Langs entered the room where the Count, Killian, Raymond, and Hansen were waiting. Breathless, Langs enthusiastically greeted Count Augustus, apologizing for not coming sooner and introducing himself as the chief healer of the Bellin Clinic. Langs didn't even notice anyone else in the room, his attention solely on the Count. But an uneasy silence filled the space as three grim faces, those of Raymond, Hansen, and the Count, gazed at him coldly. Count Augustus, in a calm yet menacing voice, asked if Langs was the same healer who had left his son for dead. Langs was visibly unprepared for this confrontation. He stood frozen, unable to respond. Then, gathering his wits, he tried to laugh it off, claiming that such a thing was absurd and that he would never have allowed it. Slowly, Count Augustus stepped aside, revealing his weakened son, Killian, glaring directly at Langs, stunned and speechless. Langs realized the beggar was the Count's son. Panicking, Langs stammered, trying to cover for himself. He lied, saying he hadn't abandoned Killian and that it was all a misunderstanding. He even tried to deflect blame onto Raymond, insisting that he had assigned the case to Raymond because of his success with saving Princess Sophia. But Killian, sitting up, angrily interrupted, exposing Langs' lies. He recounted how Langs had referred to him as a beggar and refused to treat him, and how Raymond had been the one to save him. The Count's anger erupted. He shouted that Langs had not only neglected his son's life but was also lying to his face. Langs, realizing the gravity of his actions, dropped to his knees, begging for forgiveness. But Count Augustus was far too clever to be swayed by such groveling. He was deeply disturbed that Langs would have left even a commoner to die, let alone his own son. The Count, with unwavering authority, ordered his guards to take Langs away, vowing to put him on trial for neglecting a noble. Langs pleaded for mercy, but the Count remained firm, his fury only growing as Langs' lack of compassion became more evident. With a final verdict, Count Augustus declared that Langs would never again be allowed to work, not only in Hoston but throughout the entire Cross Alliance. Langs was in disbelief, his entire career in ruins. As he was forcibly dragged out of the clinic, he begged for forgiveness, but the doors closed behind him, ending his healing career for good. Raymond and Hansen exchanged satisfied glances, feeling no sympathy for the disgraced healer. He had gotten what he deserved. Then, Count Augustus turned sharply towards Raymond, startling him. The young healer had been so engrossed in the drama that he had forgotten to properly greet the Count. But the Count, his face softening, placed a hand over his chest and expressed his deep gratitude to Raymond. In a move that shocked Raymond, the Count even bowed slightly before him, thanking him for saving his son. Raymond, pleased but flustered, asked the Count to raise his head, insisting that he had only done his duty. In truth, if it weren't for the hidden prince, the Augustus family would have lost an heir. The Count, still humbled, offered Raymond anything he desired as a token of his gratitude. Raymond's inner thoughts danced with excitement. He could hardly believe this outcome. The Count continued, offering something far greater than money or jewels. He invited Raymond to become a friend of the Augustus family. Raymond, confused at first, asked what that meant. The Count explained that although Raymond now held a Medal of Honor, he lacked power and status. As a friend of the Augustus family, Raymond would gain their full support, a privilege that held immense value. With this connection, no one would dare speak ill of Raymond, at least, not anyone who feared the Augustus family. Overcome with excitement, Raymond eagerly shook the Count's hands, unable to hide his joy. Count Augustus thanked Raymond once again for saving his son, then asked if there was anything else Raymond wanted. Laughing, Raymond requested that the Count pay the medical bills, noting that even though they were friends, in the world of doctor politics, everyone had to pay their dues. Thankfully, the Count was not a beggar, or Raymond joked that he would be in trouble. They parted on friendly terms, smiling and exchanging final thanks. In private, Count Augustus had a serious conversation with his son, Kilian. Kilian questioned his father about the reward, thinking it was too insignificant for someone who had saved his life, considering the chaos his death would have caused for the family. The Count reassured Kilian, explaining that no reward would have truly sufficed in that moment. He warned that with the power struggle growing more unpredictable, Raymond, the hidden prince, would no longer be able to avoid it. Count Augustus continued, saying that while Raymond was not directly in line for the throne, talent could not be hidden forever. Raymond, once regarded as worthless, had now shown his abilities for all to see. His royal blood and rising talent would inevitably attract enemies. The higher Raymond climbed, the more dangerous his path would become. The Count hoped that by supporting Raymond, their family could protect him from the dangers ahead. Meanwhile, in the second prince's quarters, the lavish interior reflected his refined taste. The prince was informed that Kilian had been saved by none other than Raymond, the very person he had dismissed as useless. The assassin he had hired knelt before him, explaining that though Kilian had been mortally wounded, the Bellin Clinic had somehow saved him. Neither the assassin nor the prince had anticipated this outcome. The second prince's carefully laid plans had been foiled by the hidden prince. Seething with anger, the second prince brooded over how Raymond had disrupted his scheme. He muttered insults at Raymond, frustrated that his plan had been ruined. Still, he remained composed, standing from his gilded chair and gazing out of a large panoramic window. The second prince decided he would have to keep a closer eye on Raymond, comparing him to a pet that had become too unruly. Back at the Bellin Clinic, Raymond treated an uncomplicated patient while reflecting on his conversation with Count Augustus. A surge of joy swept through him as he realized that after 5 long years, the opportunity he had been waiting for had finally arrived. With a clenched fist, he silently celebrated the fact that he could now take the healer's qualifying exam. Tears of joy welled up in his eyes as he thought of how close he was to becoming a real healer and doctor at the Bellin Clinic. However, whispers filled the clinic. The other healers and students gossiped about how Langs had been expelled because of Raymond. They speculated on how Raymond had managed to cure both Princess Sophia and Count Augustus's son, with some dismissing it as mere luck. One healer reminded the group that it was impossible to be lucky 3 times in a row, acknowledging that, strange as Raymond's method was, it clearly worked. 2 other healers reacted with shock and anger, dismissing the technique as pseudoscience. But the first healer stood firm, reminding them that the king himself had recognized the technique as legitimate. The other healers scoffed, claiming the king's paternal feelings must have clouded his judgment. Rumors spread that Raymond would be taking the exam to prove the effectiveness of his medical technique, but many doubted he would pass. Hansen, overhearing the conversation, felt disheartened by how little faith they had in Raymond. A few days later, the day of the qualifying exam arrived. Healers and apprentices gathered together, sitting on long wooden benches in the examination hall. Raymond and Hansen found seats next to each other. Raymond, brimming with confidence, had no doubt that he would pass the exam. After all, he had waited 5 years for this moment. Nearby students whispered among themselves, pointing at Raymond and calling him the hidden prince. They gossiped that, since Raymond was below F-rank, he shouldn't even be eligible for the exam, insinuating that his special privileges came from saving Princess Sophia. Hearing the students' remarks, Raymond's confidence wavered, and panic gripped him. What if he failed? The shame would be unbearable. Doubts clouded his mind, and he questioned whether he would ever have such a chance again. Sensing Raymond's nerves, Hansen tried to distract him by asking what he planned to do after passing the exam. Raymond, distracted from his worries, admitted that he hadn't really thought beyond the exam itself. His wishes were simple and even silly, he just wanted to eat meat. For 5 years, all Raymond had wanted was to pass the healer's exam. He had spent those years watching others treat patients while he was ignored, belittled, and humiliated. Now, all he wanted was the chance to heal patients himself. As he sat on the wooden bench, the faces of the patients he had saved flashed before his eyes. The feelings were indescribable, and his resolve hardened. The blue screen appeared before him, showing that his steel heart skill had increased. Raymond was surprised to see that his determination had grown even stronger just from thinking about his patients. Hansen encouraged Raymond further, reassuring him that he could pass the exam. Renewed by Hansen's words, Raymond's confidence returned. From a distance, one of the senior healers, who had believed in Raymond's technique, watched closely. He was surprised to see how calm and collected Raymond was, despite the pressure. Suddenly, the large doors to the hall swung open, and a woman entered, summoning Raymond for his exam. Raymond rose quickly from his seat, his confidence unwavering. He took a seat in a high chair before the examiners. The judges of the healing tower carefully studied his papers. One of the senior judges, surprised by what he read, asked Raymond if it was true that his level was below F rank. Another judge, a young man with red hair, smirked and asked Raymond to demonstrate his healing power. Raymond agreed and began to concentrate, summoning his healing abilities. He strained, focusing as green beams of light began to emerge from his hands. But the light was weak and quickly faded into a thin smoke. Raymond had used up all his healing energy, and it wasn't enough. The judges burst into laughter, mocking him openly.